This is not about judicial ethics. This is not about rules that should apply to judges across the board. We could have a reasonable discussion about that. This is about applying a double standard to Clarence Thomas and only Clarence Thomas.
Senator Ted Cruz yesterday in the United States Senate on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, telling the truth about the left vilifying racists that they are. Clarence Thomas in particular, and of course his wife, Ginny Thomas, now going after Justice Samuel Alito and Justice John Roberts, the turtle. Mitch McConnell adhered to the Harry Reid rule on appointing federal judges and confirming federal judges in the Senate in an election year. Harry Reid came up with that rule, and Mitch McConnell warned him at the time, this is going to come back and bite you perhaps sooner than you think. And then sure enough, it came back and bit them sooner than they had thought. And it bit them not just on federal bench seats, but on the Supreme Court itself. And, that's only part of the explanation for the Democrats self-immolating last year on Earth Day on the plaza in front of the United States Supreme Court. Killed himself. Democrat came in from Boulder, Colorado, I believe, and did the Buddhist monk thing in front of the Supreme Court because he's very angry that people continue to put smoke into the atmosphere. So naturally, he chose self-immolation as a form of protest because God knows they don't make any sense. That is, it's an extraordinary time. The Democrats and their suicide attacks. Democrats have had more suicide attackers in the United States in the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, more suicide attacks and attackers by the Democrat Party. I think Western Europe hasn't had that many radical Islamic jihadi suicide attacks over the same period of time, much less the United States of America. We haven't had that many, certainly, radical Islamic jihadi suicide attacks as the Democrats have provided us with. Whack-a-doodle-doo. But that is Ted Cruz yesterday, hearing on Capitol Hill in the Senate, controlled by the Democrats, a hearing designed to attack and undermine public confidence in the United States Supreme Court, and in particular targeting African-American conservative nominee and great Supreme Court Justice, and incidentally a friend of mine, Justice Clarence Thomas, who has been cleared of all wrongdoing, but adhered to all of the rules of ethics and beyond that the Supreme Court requires. But pay no attention to that because, there are, the news media, it's what information dominance is for. As their boy Joseph Goebbels of the Socialist Workers' Party said of Germany, a lie told once remains a lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. And that's what they're depending on. They just repeat it over and over and over again until in the public consciousness it becomes the truth. Quite extraordinary. My friend Mark Paoletta, who has worked as an attorney for Justice Clarence Thomas, also sharing lots of information that I shared with you last week about how Justice Clarence, and he's written extensively about this and published extensively about this, Mark Paoletta, about how Justice Clarence Thomas has adhered to and conformed with all of the ethical standards and rules for the Supreme Court, which is why the Democrats now want to change them. And, of course, they don't want these rules to apply to themselves in the Senate because they don't, or to members of the House of Representatives because they don't. But Mark Paoletta, again, tweeting out, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who belongs to a whites-only exclusive yacht club in Rhode Island, of all places. That's why they call him Senator Whites Only. Call him Senator White Man, Senator Whites Only, his Whites Only club. Oh, no, we've got an ethnic mix. Yeah, they have an Italian. Senator Whitehouse attacks Justice Thomas on his disclosure forms. Has he reviewed Justice Jackson, Ketanji Brown Jackson's forms? She's made multiple errors over the years as a federal judge and now that she's on the Supreme Court. But, of course, she's not going to be held to that standard because they're Democrats. Were it not for double standards, liberals would have no standards at all. and she still may not be properly disclosing her income. And Mark Paoletta, attorney, writer, author, filmmaker, writes, let's review, follow along, and he produces the documentation of Democrat justices not following the rules, whether they're rigorous or not. They're the rules that are in place. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson failed to disclose her husband's consulting income on medical malpractice cases on some of her previous forms, that is to say, multiple forms. How many years and filings did she fail to disclose this income? But she does not appear to have corrected or fixed those errors, multiple, plural. The law requires a filer to report a spouse's income from any source of more than $1,000. And in her recent form, she lists in Part 3, legal malpractice consulting, which appears to describe any activity and not a source. So she is not filing correctly unless her husband set up an LLC and performed these consulting services through this entity. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson must report her husband's fees from each source and each client that paid him more than $1,000. It is perfectly unclear whether he named his entity Legal Malpractice Consulting as she listed it, because she did not list accurately. Ketanji Brown Jackson's husband is a doctor and no doubt charges significant fees, so every client likely paid him more than $1,000. As Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson amended her previous forms in her district court and D.C. Circuit Court submissions to reflect each source that paid her husband? Of course not. Has Justice Jackson presided as a judge in any medical malpractice case that affected his clients or his field of practice? Justice Jackson also failed to report reimbursements from 2014 and 2016 for speeches. She also failed to disclose her salary for teaching at George Washington University in 2014. Justice Jackson only disclosed these omissions once she was nominated to the Supreme Court, but they were violations as she was sitting on a federal court and she was required to report, and she failed to do so. But under Senator Sheldon White's only from Rhode Island, in his view, that repeated omissions constitute willfulness, was her failure to disclose over several years willful. It certainly was repeated. Pretty amazing stuff here. And Mark Paoletta on Twitter lays it all out. Mark Paoletta, attorney, says, my view is that these were mistakes and that she noted the omissions when they were called to her attention, but it appears she still needs to correctly disclose her spouse's income sources. But it's outrageous that Senator Sheldon Whiteman, with his whites-only club, smears Justice Clarence Thomas on this issue and no one else. Isn't that amazing? What is his view on Justice Jackson's repeated and years-long violations? These are entirely legitimate questions. And they have these left-wing smear campaigns that they've set up. Fix the Court legal campaign, Sheldon White House man, and media are pursuing these questions with as much vigor as they're pursuing the originalist justices. Now, this is a political Democrat Party smear. This is what information dominance is all about. It's a one-way street. Were it not for double standards, they would have no standards at all. Pretty amazing stuff. Yeah, so the big hearing yesterday, smearing racists that they are, the party of the Confederacy and the Klan and Jim Crow. Still segregated, the party of segregated graduations at Columbia University, racially segregated, and of course the lavender graduation for LGBTQIA, ampersand, pound sign, plus. Man, oh man. Yes, sir. Also, Michael Pack, who is a filmmaker and scholar and a friend of mine also. The perfect summary of today's hearing We know what this is all about. Yesterday's Democrat lynching. It's a continuation of the high-tech lynching of Clarence Thomas that was begun in 1991 by Joe Biden, who now lives in the White House. We know what this is all about. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed. Just say it. Then, now, at least we're honest with each other. That is, Clarence Thomas himself, from the film Created Equal and the book Created Equal by Michael Pack, friend of mine and filmmaker and author. But that's your Democrat Party. The lynchings will continue until they seize control of the court. All right, so that's your Democrat Party for you. Let's go. Speaking of the Democrat Party, let's go to soundbite number one. Yesterday, I failed to use all the audio that we prepared for the show because we got to talking and things were going on. You know what I'm saying? Anthony Fauci, you know him. Anthony Fauci is the media guru. He's a hero of the left. They have signs in their front yards all over Washington, D.C. and Montgomery County, Maryland, full of lefty liberals with thank you, Anthony Fauci, and all this stuff. Remember Anthony Fauci in April of 2020 telling us that, when this thing is over, the whole world is going to be a completely different place.
When you gradually come back, you don't jump into it with both feet. You say, what are the things that you could still do and still approach normal? One of them is absolute compulsive hand washing. The other one is you don't ever shake anybody's hands. That's clear.
That's clear. Never shake anyone's hands ever again. That's never. And I don't think compulsive hand washing is a sound recommendation from a medical professional. Compulsive behavior is not something we aspire to, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Compulsive hand washing should become the norm and never, ever shake anyone's hand again. This is why some people are still driving around in their cars by themselves wearing masks because of advice like this. That's right. We will never shake hands again.
I don't think should ever shake hands ever again, to be honest with you. Not only would it be good to prevent coronavirus disease, it probably would decrease the incidence of influenza dramatically in this country.
It'll cut down on the reproduction rate for humans, too, because, if you don't start with a handshake, how are you going to get, at a home plate there? That is, never shake hands again. Compulsive hand washing is highly recommended, according to Dr. Anthony Fauci. Isn't that amazing? Just amazing stuff. You remember Joe Biden warning us, when was this? The December of 2021, Dr. Joe Biden. He's married to a doctor. Yeah, they gave her a PhD because her husband provided the funding to the university, but never mind that.
We are looking at a winter of severe illness and death.
Severe illness and death. For the unvaccinated, he was going on and on. If you're unvaccinated, for you, not for the vaccinated. It's a winter of severe illness and death. Did you see the CEO of Moderna taking in billions? Billions, literally billions. It's good to be a Democrat. They mandated his product. I wish they would mandate T-shirts and coffee mugs from the Chris Plant store in the same way that I would take in billions, because every American would have to have a T-shirt and a coffee mug from the Chris Plant store, which are excellent T-shirts and coffee mugs, just in passing. I love to tell the truth, and I love to offer solutions. Well, if you have high blood pressure, maybe you live with someone who does, I want to tell you about some friends of mine. 120 Life. 120 Life, they're a Chicago-based company that developed a delicious juice drink that can help lower your blood pressure naturally. 120 Life is a natural juice drink made from pomegranates, tart cherries, cranberries, hibiscus, beetroot, magnesium. Look them up. They are all beneficial for your blood pressure. Can help lower your blood pressure without the side effects and do it naturally. I'm drinking it and I love it. I know you're going to love it too. Helps me keep energized and helps keep my blood pressure in check too. The truth is there are easy, natural ways to help keep your blood pressure in check, and one of them is 120 Life. So check it out and tell them Chris Plant sent you. Visit 120life.com. That's 120life.com. And you can order a 2-week trial pack of their juice drink. There's a money-back guarantee, so you can't lose. Just use the the code Chris, and you're going to save 15% because you hang with me. The natural approach to blood pressure management. Visit 120life.com today and start seeing the benefits in just 2 weeks. These statements and products have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. The product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or condition. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah, remember all the good advice we were getting? And now, you know, we're lifting the ban. Biden has had a ban on people coming into the country if they're unvaccinated, but that ban is going away now. They're pulling the plug on the ban on unvaccinated people going into the country. I guess it's going to be a summer of death and mayhem and discontent.
The reason to take the vaccine is, of course, because it can protect you from severe death.
Hey, Chris here with some exciting news. Now you can listen to me live on the WMAL app. Doesn't matter if you're in your car, in the office, on the go. The WMAL app delivers crystal clear around-the-clock news coverage anywhere with cell service or Wi-Fi. So don't miss a second of your favorite shows. Download the WMAL app today on the Apple App Store or at Google Play Store. You know, Rob O'Neill, the core member of what we call SEAL Team 6, who put the last and final bullet into Osama bin Laden to kill the troglodyte mass murderer from hell. And in Texas, they caught the mass murderer illegal alien down there. Just don't call him an illegal alien. MSNBC will become angry with you. Rob O'Neill, Navy SEAL, who I've met a number of times, had beers with, great guy. He tweeted out, to be clear, I've had so much at drag shows, and I do truly appreciate their artistic talents. However, grown men should not be showing their beep to children. Seems reasonable. Okay, today is Mailbag Day also, and we have questions from you, our beloved listeners, that I will seek to answer or at a bare minimum respond to. So many wacky Democrat stories. And I want to share with you a moment at a restaurant in San Diego County in California, a restaurant where they play the national anthem every day at noon, which has caused Democrats to lose what's left of their minds. Wait till you hear this stuff. And a news report from San Diego, a television station in San Diego. It's actually the television station where my brother is a news reporter. But let's go to the phones. Let's go to Saul calling from Silver Spring, Maryland. Saul, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, Chris. Good morning.
Hey, Saul.
So my point is that with all the focus now on the definition of woman, no one has ever tried to define what the word black means. I've been asking this question for over 30 years. No one wants to even try to answer. Back in prehistoric times, when I attended law school, the first thing they taught us was the concept of void for vagueness. That is, a statute or a law has to be understandable, yet we have all these laws and statutes and rulings that use the word black, and we don't know what it means. Do we have Nuremberg laws? Am I black because I have one grandparent who is black? Is the determination done visually, and if so, by whom? What about a person with black parents who looks white? If I apply for a black scholarship, who's to say that I'm not black? And if a person with a penis can feel female and be recognized as such under the law, why can't I feel black and qualify for that black agricultural set-aside that the government has set up unconstitutionally, in my opinion? I think this is really a central issue that needs to be addressed and is a real good argument in favor of equality for all. Dare I use the word equity?
Dare I use the word equity? Well, you raise an interesting question. I believe in law more than 100 years ago, black or African American was defined as 1/8. Isn't that right? 1/8 if you're, but you had to be able to prove that you're 1/8 black, and I don't know how you do that. And also because the Democrats have turned everything into mush. You've got Rachel Dolezal, who has 4 white grandparents and therefore 2 white parents, who said that she was black, and MSNBC said that's okay with them. MSNBC, an alleged news organization that wins awards for journalism and pays their so-called journalists millions of dollars a year, they said, we played the audio earlier today, that if Elizabeth Warren thinks she's a Cherokee Indian, who are we to second guess? Playing the audio of the Republican councilman from Delaware County in Indiana, who says that he now identifies as a woman of color who is a lesbian, and perhaps he's drawing attention to the absurdity of the left's deconstruction of language and science and genetics. But honestly, all of this comes down to, and the left with their semantics, you know, it is they've torn the world apart by way of, in large part, manipulation and deconstruction of language, right? And what do these words mean anymore? What is a woman? If a man, I was yesterday did a story. We're at a university. They're putting what they call menstrual products in men's rooms because the head of the organization, a student there, said that, you know, for men who menstruate. So they've torn the language down to the point where words have no meaning anymore, which is quite deliberate and by design, right, Saul?
Yeah, it is. But what I'm saying is the lack of definition and what the leftists are now doing can be used against them. What would happen if tens or hundreds of thousands of college students applied for black scholarships? What would happen if every farmer in the United States applied for these black set-asides? I mean, eventually you're going to force. I mean, there are, in fact, people who are turned away as not qualifying because somebody has determined that they're not black. And I don't really have a problem with that. I don't want to get, down into the guts of it. But what I'm asking for is a definition and somebody explaining to me why any law that used the word black is not, by definition, void for vagueness, because nobody knows what that means.
Well, that's right. Nobody knows what woman means. They've erased the word woman. They've erased what it means to be a woman. They've erased the value of being a woman. We played Dave Chappelle a little while ago saying, the person formerly known as Bruce Jenner was made Woman of the Year his first year declaring himself to be a woman. We got that lunatic with the Bud Light influencer. Dylan Mulvaney. Just extraordinary stuff. In fact, the headline today, Bud Light maker offers distributors free beer, more ad spending after Dylan Mulvaney backlash. Anheuser-Busch wholesalers say they've faced plummeting sales and personal threats. Naturally, that's the world we live in and the country that the left has created, over backlash from a promotion with transgender influencer, whatever the hell that is. The maker of Bud Light is working to make amends with its distributors who say they've taken the brunt of the backlash to a company promotion with a transgender influencer. Yesterday I was sharing that they have lost, 26% of their market share of their sales, 26% since this happened. And now the Navy is going with it works so well for Bud Light that the Navy is going with a transgender recruitment scheme. The Democrat Party is a party, it's where crazy people gather to wield political force, and they'll riot and loot and burn and sack and plunder if you do not bow to their demands. Probably shouldn't say bow in this context, but listen, Saul, thank you. Thank you for raising a question. Now we've got somebody else raising a series of questions too. Let's go to Christian, calling from Fayetteville, North Carolina. Christian, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for letting me on again. This is quite the honor. Can you hear me?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. You're welcome. I was just shutting up to let you talk, you know.
Okay. Anyway, I was just thinking about while I was listening on the way into my homeschool end of year co-op graduation ceremony that how we being conservatives and Americans and freedom lovers are like accused of hating transgenders, being anti-transgender, anti-this, anti-that, and they got it all wrong. We're not anti the people who are victims of this transgender ideology. We're anti the ideology. I know a transgender person, and I love her to death. I mean, I'm really sad that she's going through this, and so it's not like we have hatred for those people. We have hatred for the establishment that's put them through this, that's lying to them, and all the hell that they're going through. Transforming kids, mutilating kids, and confusing with drugs and whatever else. That's what we hate. We don't hate the Mexicans or whoever that's coming on the southern border. We don't hate those people. They're people. They're children of God. We love them, and we feel sorry for all the children who are being trafficked and all the chaos that's been created by the system. So it's not that we hate brown people or Mexican people or any people for that matter. We hate when the establishment, as it were, creates chaos and creates danger, creates division. Same thing with inner city blacks that are killing each other in Chicago. We don't hate black people. That's stupid. We love people. We just hate the fact that they're caught up in this system, that they're, forced into this, and they're, lost, I guess you'd say, that they're creating such violence. It's not just blacks there, obviously, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's we're accused of being racist, homophobic, anti-trans, blah blah blah. We're anti-hatred. We're anti-overbearing government, stupid government, communism. That's what we're anti. Does that make sense?
Of course it does. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I agree completely. I don't hate anybody, including transgender people, but I do believe they've been caught up in something that the left has created and ginned up. Where were all these people 10 years ago and 50 years ago and 100 years ago and 1,000 years ago? The Democrat Party has whipped it up into a thing. They've turned it into a fad that they've got people like high school girls jumping on the bandwagon. There is a survey out, Household Pulse survey, that came out October of 2022, and they used the U.S. Census as their source of data. And they asked total LGBT, right, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, by generation. And baby boomers said 2.7%. 2.7% of baby boomers said they fell into LGBT, right? The previous generation before them, 1.7%. Then Gen X, it goes up to 3.3%. Millennials, they say LGBT, 11.2%. Now Gen Z, 19.7% say they are LGBT, all right? So baby boomers, 2.7%. Gen Z, 19.7%. That's basically 20%, rounding error. And that's 1 out of 5 people are gay, all right? And something happened there. Something happened along the way. That's another lyric to another song. But when you go from 2.7% gay with the baby boomers, 3.3% with Gen X not that long ago, to suddenly 19.7%, there is a sales campaign going on here. They've made it more popular than Bud Light.
Right. And I totally believe that the people behind all this, however that works, could care less about transgender people, gay people, black people, whatever. All they're caring about is division. This is a way to destroy us from within, divide us, conquer us, divide and conquer, and that's exactly what they're doing.
It's the left manipulating public opinion in the name of power, in the name of securing power. And there are many means by which you secure power, and certainly the division, the left uses division along lines of race and class and gender. They've multiplied the number of genders for that very reason. They've actually multiplied the number of races, too. There are only 4 races on the planet Earth, but you'd think that there were 100 different races in the United States, the way that the Democrats, the left, that is to say, have divided us and pitted us against one another. They pretend for resources or something like that. I mean, everything from global warming to it's just completely nuts what they've done to us. But you're on to him, and you're absolutely right. I can't think of anybody that I actually hate. Even, I've talked about this over the years. I don't like Al-Qaeda. I think that, ISIS, they should be shot in the head and killed for the good of mankind. But that's for the good of mankind. It's because I love normal people and everybody else that wants to live in peace. Rob O'Neill shot Osama bin Laden in the head. I didn't like Osama bin Laden. I believe that he should have been shot and killed. He was, again, like a product of the radical Islamic jihadi system in which he was raised, and he became a monster, and he needed to be killed for the good of humanity. And kids, you mentioned like inner city crime in Chicago and Baltimore and so on. I don't despise the adults or the teenagers that are doing the killing. The adults perhaps should be held accountable for creating this environment in which these people were raised and for raising human beings like they're feral cats. And that's what has created the nightmare scenarios that we see in Chicago and Detroit and in Baltimore and elsewhere. And it's every time I look up, it's the left, Christian. It's the left every single time. Credit or blame goes to, in the end, the Democrat Party. That's the reality. And thank you for the call. And it's a very thoughtful contribution. So I appreciate your calling in. And speaking of the left, they continue to demolish everything in their path, including San Francisco, the once great city of San Francisco. And I've got a number of stories to share with you out of San Francisco today. The open-air drug markets, the mentally ill, homeless people, the drug addiction, the syringe, the needle and syringe handouts, the Biden people sending out free crack pipes. No, it's just a glass tube with a brass screen and a rubber mouthpiece. It's not a crack pipe until you put crack in it. Do they give them Bic lighters, too? Because you'd think you'd have to give them Bic lighters. What kind of racists are they not giving them Bic lighters? But we've got an update on that. And in New York City, what happens when a security guard attempts to arrest a shoplifter? All right, out of New York City, wild video shows Walgreens security guard getting hit by shoplifter, and he's the one arrested. The New York Post, Craig McCarthy writing, and there is video, it's amazing. An armed security guard at Walgreens at Port Authority bus terminal in New York City says he was wrongfully arrested after he jumped in to stop a shoplifter who allegedly clocked him in the head with a jar of food. There's video of it. Retired NYPD officer Salvatore Lopacino, 50 years old, intends to sue the Port Authority Police Department over the March incident that left him facing charges, including assault, for allegedly threatening to recklessly cause injury to the accused thief's back. Now, here's what happened. Cell phone footage shows this. Lopicciolo, Salvatore Lopicciolo. He retired from the NYPD last year. He took a job at Walgreens as a security guard. A shoplifter came in with an empty bag, filled it up with stuff, was walking out. Security guard tried to stop him. The thief swung the bag, slammed him in the head. There were jars of things in the bag. Put a big welt on his forehead. And the Port Authority police arrested the security officer for assaulting the shoplifter. So much for broken windows policing. This is the opposite of a sane society. This is Democrats in New York City. And Mayor Eric Adams, who used to be a police officer and should be arrested himself. Now, this is at a Walgreens in New York, and they arrested. He spent 7 hours in jail before making bail and being released, and he's being charged with multiple charges, multiple counts, including assault on the shoplifter. He's the security guard, right? You may remember that Walgreens, the same Walgreens, closed 5 stores in San Francisco, 5 locations, citing organized retail crime, violence against their employees and customers, And Walgreens pulled out of San Francisco altogether because Democrats. You may also recall that Whole Foods removed their flagship store from San Francisco on April 11th of this year, just a short time ago, shut down their flagship store in San Francisco, citing safety concerns for their employees and the crime and the theft because of Democrats. Let's just call it what it is. Now, today we learn that the department store Nordstrom is pulling out of San Francisco. The Nordstrom store, the last one in San Francisco, and the Nordstrom Rack, where they have the less expensive Nordstrom stuff, pulling out of San Francisco because San Francisco is being murdered by the Democrats. You may remember Mayor London Breed. Her name is London Breed. She's the mayor of San Francisco. She's a left-winger, a radical. They had to remove their spawn of terrorist prosecutor there, their George Soros prosecutor. And here's the mayor of San Francisco, London Breed.
We can't continue to allow people to freely flow in and out of this city, commit these acts, and get away with it.
With it. Can't get away with it. Everybody's illiterate. London Breed.
I will say that there's more feces on the sidewalks than I've ever seen.
San Francisco is dying. Nordstrom is leaving. They're pulling out because of crime.